Welcome. I'd like to introduce you to a session which is called Life at the Heart of the Industry 4.0 Revolution. It's where we're going today, it's where we're heading in the future. Before we start, I would like you, however, to close your eyes for a second. So it's not an app, I'd just like you to close your eyes. And I would like you to think back and think about a factory. What does the word factory inspire to you? Are you thinking of words like maybe dirty, smelly, blue collar, noisy, greasy? Okay, you can open your eyes. We're now going to take you on a journey as to what factories look like today and what they will look like in the future. So just before we talk about the factories of the future, maybe we should position, and then I will introduce my brilliant panel, maybe we should position why are we talking about the Industry 4.0 revolution. So through history, we've had a number of revolutions. So it's not a history lesson, I promise. We'll be very, very quick. But we had the first, at the end of the 18th century, there was the introduction of steam engines, steam power. That was a big change, and it changed the whole way of life. Moving forward, we had electricity. Again, that created major changes for mankind. Railways, electric turbines, lots of new things that were happening. Then we can start thinking about Taylorism, Fordism, all of those notions that we all learnt in history. So it seems quite far away, but really it's not that far. So now let's move to the 70s. The 70s, barely 40 years ago. Think about the first computers. So I'm just going to stand up for a second. Back in the 70s, the first computers were about my height. Just now think what size your laptop is, what size your BlackBerry is, what size your tablet is. So technology is changing. It's clearly changing, and it's changing very fast. We all seem to think that that was 40 years ago. It's not that far. We're now about to embark on a new revolution, which is rapidly changing. Many of you don't believe we're there. Many of us, my great panel, are already living it. And we will all see it in the next 10 to 15 years. This is going to happen. It is a reality. And we're going to introduce to you how this is a reality. So now time for me to present my panel. So I will start over on the right with Ghislaine Doukhan from Safran Analytics. Next to Ghislaine, I have Catherine Ladousse from Lenovo. So welcome, Catherine and Ghislaine. I then have Keith Williams from Altran. I have Rania Rostom from GE, Denis Gardin from Airbus, and myself, Helen Cherré from Altran. Okay, so we're going to start now with our first questions for the panel. And what we're going to try and do this afternoon to familiarize you with the topic is to talk about the Industry 4.0 revolution and what is really driving it. So to start with the drivers of change and what's happening today, I would like to give the floor to Catherine Ladousse from Lenovo, who is going to explain some of the consumer trends, disruptive technologies. What is driving the change today, Catherine?
Wow, big question. Thank you. So I think you mentioned, the revolution, and if we remember also the revolution of internet, a few years ago, we changed completely the way, we were working, we were living, using the technology device. But right now, we see absolutely a dramatic shift, about the proliferation, about all, the device. And if I can give you, some number which is quite impressive, is there is a 25 billion of things, and we are speaking about industrial Internet of Things. We are, connected to Internet. We have 1 billion of people, we have a tablet, and there is 4 billion of new phones which are sold every day. In fact, I gave the example of my company, for example, we sell 4 devices, each second. So, and I'm sure that in the room you have how many devices do you have? That you have your phone, your tablet, your PC, and connected every time. And if one time you are not connected, I think you think that you can stop even thinking, which is, I think, an issue. But that is another story. But and I think this the multiplication from the perspective of Lenovo, of course, which is a manufacturer of all these devices, create a very high expectation from the consumer and from the user. And the expectations, the requirement right now with this new device is very high, which means that we want to customize completely the product, And in a market which is completely commoditized, you see, for example, you see all the smartphones are the same. At the same time, we want to have our own smartphone. And for example, in our company, in Motorola, we made, you know, the smartphone, which is exactly the motor maker, which is exactly in line with what you want, the colors, the design, and so on. So I think one of the main, I would say, driver of the change is first is not the technology. Change is the user, the consumer, who want to decide which kind of device, you know, he want to have, and that he will use for private and professional use. And for us, the requirement, well, to be competitive, is to put on the market a device which will be completely in line with the anticipation of the needs of the consumer. And we have always the idea, for example, that you have everything is connected, and the fridge, you know, you can the fridge can alert you that there is a milk which is, you know, missing. But beyond, you know, this image and metaphor is more, you know, to make sure that we put in the hands, you know, of the consumer this device, which will be really useful for his day to day. And that has, I think, changed the process of innovation, because now the innovation are not coming only from the engineer in a lab, even if he's someone who is absolutely a genius, and we have genius everywhere, I'm sure in all the companies represented here, but the genius can't really put, I think, the right product if it is not in line with the anticipation of the consumer needs. And I think the company, as us company, our company, who are here, who are, I think, a leading company, have been, I think, the company who have anticipated the needs of each use of the different device.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Funnily enough, a few years ago, I was sat in an office with Denis, and we were actually talking about the concept of bringing your own device to work.
Yeah.
And at the time, we said 3 years ago, but nobody brings their own device to work. Who would pay and bring their own device? And today, we all go into the office with our iPad. So talking about...
I'm not sure that it's an iPad, so I think we
I
need
shouldn't
to...
say tablet.
Just with a tablet.
Tablet. Sorry, Catherine.
But it shows that it's a very interesting topic, because there is 90% of the company will accept, you know, the fact that you can bring, you know, the employee can bring their own device. So of course, our challenge for us, you know, is really to make sure that the device that even is used for professional is also attractive, you know, for the consumer. And that also is interesting in terms of trend, you know, for the manufacturer. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's move more into manufacturing. And Denis, explain to us today how people are using different technologies in the workplace.
So I will talk for what I know, which is Airbus. Airbus, you know, we're making big, complex products, big aircraft, and one very important requirement is quality for the safety of the product. We don't see, I mean, fully robotized, you know, assembly line, you know, in our business. We still think the workers will still be central into the final decision about quality and so on. But we need, what we do is we bring to the worker all the support so that they can do their job better, faster, and with ensuring quality. So what we do already, which is not science fiction, is since 2012, we have implemented in the final assembly line of our aircraft something called augmented reality, which is basically today a tablet on which the workers are using, on which there is a camera to compare the work of assembling the different parts with the 3D mock-up of the airplane. So that the worker can see immediately if the parts has been well assembled or not, and all the problems, or I mean all the things are recorded, and so also it's a guarantee of quality and safety in the end for the product. Next generation would be to move from this tablet to glasses. So a lot of companies are you know, about to launch glasses on which you can see through, but you can also see on top of the reality some computer data. So you can have annotations, you know, for assemblies and so on. So this is happening. This is what we call augmented reality. Another part I would just mention is what we call collaborative robots. So this will come into production next year, 2016. So for doing some complex assemblies also, like drilling things, you know, at the right place and so on. We have these nice little robots which are all designed not to be dangerous, because a robot, you know, can make a lot of damages if it doesn't have the right software. So we have ensured that it is perfectly safe. But then you can see the worker doing part of the job, the robots doing the other part of the job. So we see this collaboration between computers, robots, and people being the future for one future of what we call Industry 4.0.
Okay, great. So maybe let's move over to the data part, which is more Ghislaine's part of the business.
Yeah, thank you. So beginning of this year, Safran had decided that a very important trend in the society was in the environment was that we are able to collect and to deal with more and more data. So we launched a new entity called Safran Analytics, and I was asked to be at the head of this entity to really be able to not only collect, because we are collecting a lot of data, be able to put really to put intelligence in this data, to understand, put insight in this data, and to understand better our products, our processes, our customers through data. And I think the revolution of digitalization in the world, in our factories, in our companies, will bring us more and more data that, if we are able to analyze well, will help us to be more performant everywhere, internally, and also being able to produce the best product, the more adapted, customized product for our clients. And that's the objective. And we think within Safran that data will be the key for tomorrow.
Thank you, Ghislaine. So I'd now like to hand over to Keith, who is Mr. Big Data at Altran. So Keith, tell us what Altran's doing. What's Disruptive?
Can I just first say, I saw your collaborative robot a few weeks ago, and it's fantastic. I have to say that. It's really, really good. And it's fantastic to see a robot like that in close proximity to workers. It's very impressive. I think, to come back to the question that you mentioned about the change, I think one thing that's very true, I think we were just discussing this before the talk, is its life at the heart of Industry 4.0 is very, very quick, I think. It's quite extraordinary, the pace at which innovation is occurring and being deployed in our clients. And I think certainly in my career, I've never seen innovation and deployment of new technology at the rate that we're seeing it at the moment in all industries. And this is true of all the industries, automotive or aerospace. It's the same picture we see. And I think there's three really key reasons for that. I think one is we've reached a technology tipping point. You've got a range of technologies which have reached the maturity where they can be deployed, and they're also feeding off each other. So if you take something like image recognition is a key component of something like autonomous driving. It's a key component of robotics within a manufacturing environment. It's a key component of drones. And so you're seeing these enabling technologies being deployed in multiple different contexts, and that's speeding up the rate at which we get innovation. The second thing is collaboration, the fact that now when someone does research in this area, it just transfers quickly across the globe. So if you're doing a robotics project in an industrial context, you're not starting off from a blank piece of paper. You're starting off from the open source robotics community, where you can import all that knowledge and start working on your specific new problem. And that's speeding up innovation. And I think the final thing is just the number of people, particularly within Asia, who are now engaged in these topics. And those three factors are really combining to make these technology developments that are occurring just very, very quick.
Okay, so we're about to hand over to Rania. I should just point out that on the left of the stage, which is my right, but on your left, we have Véronique, who's a graphic facilitation artist. She's currently capturing with illustrations the conference that's ongoing. Okay, so Rania, Over to you. I know we've spoken about additive manufacturing, 3D printers. Tell us what's disruptive and happening at GE.
Right. So first of all, I agree totally with all my colleagues, right? The Internet of Things, and for us, it's the Internet of really big things and robotics and, crowdsourcing, the digitization of the factory floor. So I'll throw one more into the mix, which is advanced manufacturing. As you think about it, additive manufacturing with 3D printing, and it's really that whole notion of printing what you need, where you need it, when you need it. And that is transformational in terms of being disruptive, because think about, when I covered the Middle East, North Africa, Turkey region, but think about what it does in terms of trade. Think about what it does in terms of lowering the barriers to entry for SMEs, for other players in the ecosystem, entrepreneurs, tech startups. So basically what we're seeing is manufacturing is going to become a lot more democratized. That whole, notion, so it's going to change the whole competitor landscape as we see it. Your competition today is not going to be who you think it is. And so the one thing I'd also like to add a little bit, just expand on that point in terms of the digitization of the factory floor, because at the heart of advanced manufacturing is this digital thread that connects the designers with product engineers, with suppliers, with distributors, and then your service teams, and into this one cohesive intelligent system. And at GE, so we call that the Brilliant Factory. And we're already piloting that today in a lot of our own factories, and we look forward to doing it with customers, for customers. So I think, as we think about just the disruptive forces and the challenges, it's really going to be interesting about how the hardware and software is coming together and the meshing of all that.
Indeed. So I think that introduces nicely the second question, which is about the challenges that we're facing today, but more importantly, the challenges that we'll be facing tomorrow because of all of these disruptive changes. So do you want to maybe elaborate on that, or should I hand over to Denis?
Yeah, so briefly I'll say, Catherine, you alluded to it on the consumer side. I'll say that on the industrial side, we see 50 billion machines becoming connected by the year 2020. So you take that, you're really kind of marrying, physics and analytics. Maybe one thing I'll say is that, impact on the future, you think about future generations. A lot of time we think, are you going to be engineers? Are you going to be mechanical engineers? Are you going to be software engineers? I think the future is going to be very meshed. It's the marrying of both. And so it's really, we like to think of ourselves today as a digital industrial company. So I think this is, we've got to think about the impact on talent, the impact on people on this future generation is kind of like where our head's at.
Okay, thank you. And Denis, what about the new rules of engagement that it's introducing? We spoke about that.
I think, we also at Airbus look at how to exploit data to improve processes. And so we're launching projects, to see, for example, how we could use the data of parts which are manufactured by a supplier. How do those parts, are aging along the life of an aircraft, and so to try to anticipate the problems and so on. So in that context, we have to first get the data from suppliers, for example, or even afterwards, get the data from the airlines who are using the aircraft. And this has not been anticipated, in the past contracts, because we were basically buying a part and selling an aircraft. But what about the data? Sometimes there are some clauses in the contract which are written, but they were not thought in the context of having the approach of optimizing the system through the value chain. And so this is going to change the relationship between the buyers, the suppliers, because the data which were worth nothing in the past, now they have a value. So who is going to take this value? How it's going to work? It's going to be very interesting, because I guess we'll see some changes in the supply chains and the make or buy strategy of big groups like us. So it's things which I anticipate which will happen.
Okay. So I'm going to hand over to Ghislaine, because I know that she's very good at looking after the data and protecting data.
Yes, and I want to say that we're entering in a world that will be more and more collaborative, and with the outside, but also internally. Because if you think about our ERPs, I don't know which ERPs you have internally, but the data is generated generally by silos. If you want to make manufacturing communicating with people developing engine or doing the support, it's very hard to get the data. And really, we have now means which are different than ERP or traditional IT systems that could enable us to create collaboration internally in all the company, and also with our customers, with our suppliers. It's just what you were saying for Airbus. And so we are entering in a new world, and we need to change the state of mind, because people, for the time being, are considering that data is their property. And if they share, they will lost power, they will lost something. But the value of data is really in sharing. Enriching data creates a value.
So Catherine, maybe you want to talk about how we anticipate what people do with data and how your devices are helping data enabling?
Yes, sure, because I think for us, you speak about to be fast. I think for us it's speed, because we need to be the first, for example, as a manufacturer, to create the device that will be competitive vis-à-vis to our competitor. And means, for example, we created as a solution a PC which is hybrid, between PC and tablet with the yoga, and then I can tell you all the players, the PC player are doing the same, which is at the end the right thing. So I think the challenge for the industry as my company is to be able, as I said, to anticipate the consumer need, but also to influence the consumer need. I give an example of the smartphone. For example, if you have the feeling that all the smartphones are the same, so we're speaking about commoditization, at the same time, we see now, a trend which is a phablet. Why? Because that we are using, I don't know how long do you use your smartphone to phone, well, to do the basic thing, but there is only, the study shows that there is only 7% of the time, globally, that you are using your smartphone to speak on the phone. And so it means that now the trend is to have bigger screen, to be able really to use your smartphone to check your email, to go on the internet and so on. And I think we can succeed when we are able to combine this very strong knowledge, and you are right, the data also, of course, help us on the consumer use, the consumer trend, the social trend, and to anticipate, but at the same time to have the lab and all the manufacturing process to be able very quickly to put, on the market the concept, and we, for example, I organized a press trip 3 years ago when I have a journalist coming in a lab and they have seen the concept of a PC which was, on 360 degree, but it was a concept. And then it took a little bit a while to put on the market, but now, is one of it has been a differentiation, for our company. So it's really a combination of go fast, but of course it's really the innovation process that need to be, I think, done in the company to make sure that by crowdfunding or, any opportunity to ensure that you put the right device, at the right moment.
Go on, Keith. I think that's a nice handover for you, actually.
There's a couple of comments I'd just like to come back on there, I think. A number of you mentioned this idea of the sort of a data plane for the product. And I think that's absolutely key. I heard a quote recently from a senior exec, I think it was Nissan, who was saying, they have 20 million vehicles out there that they know pretty much nothing about. So I think a key component of Industry 4.0 is how you create this data plane. So you have the data that's used in the design process, it follows all the way through manufacturing into operation, but also then back into the innovation process, which is the point you made. So where you're using the data not just in the development of the product, but then you're capturing data from the use of the product and you're feeding that back to close the loop on the development. I think a second point that I think was raised there was the whole issue of traditional industrial companies having to really come to terms with both data and also software. It's those two. And a lot of the big industrials have tended to have a mechanical pedigree. And you can see a lot of them now having to make big strategic moves to effectively place data and software at the centre of their Industry 4 strategy. You can see that with Safran, with Safran Analytics. You can see that with GE, with GE Digital. If we were talking here if we had an automotive player here, a number of the automotive players have gone out there, either OEMs or tier ones, and bought software companies and integrated them within their operation. So you see all the players who are really serious about Industry 4.0, making big moves to bring software and data as a core part of their strategy.
Thank you, Keith. So I think that moves us on to the next question, which was question number 3 about the impacts on the extended working environment. We've clearly seen that things are changing, the supply chain is changing, additive layout manufacturing is changing things because it's a new concept. How do we manage the concept? You spoke about modeling with a tablet under an aircraft. I actually read somewhere, in fact I think it was on the little film on your site, Denis, that if you go around the A380 with a tablet and you have the operator going around with the tablet, it would take him 3 weeks to check all of those parts and that all the brackets were okay. If you were to do it with the tablet as against just the guy inspecting by himself, it would take 3 days. That is an amazing saving in time and efficiency. So how are we managing, how are we training people? What are the impacts on the extended environment? So I don't know who'd like to take that question first. Maybe Rania? Yeah.
Sure, happy to. So maybe I'll kind of like talk about 3 things in terms of how we're thinking about it. One is, so you've got to start on the inside, right? And I'll say that GE is going through a big cultural transformation because we've got to be faster, more entrepreneurial. We've got to adopt a way of working with customers where we're able to sit at the table together and say, what's the problem we're trying to solve for? So it's not happening thousands of miles away. And take that kind of like through the line in terms of, well, let's do a minimum viable product quickly and put it into the market or put it on a test field. So, and I think taking that through the cycle, and then you kind of test it and iterate and improve it, but together collaboratively with the customer, not anymore in silo. So, I mean, like the currency of today's collaboration, and outcomes are the goal, right? So it's, so I think that's a big one. And we kind of look at that through, you know, when you think about, you're trying to solve for local needs, so you do that through we do that through the innovation centers, which very much kind of, that takes me to my second point, they very much also act as industrial incubators, because you can do that together with your customers, but you've also got to start thinking about the ecosystem at large. You've got to think about, you know, as you grow and localize and you think about implications on supply chain, you've got to start bringing SMEs in, you've got to start bringing entrepreneurs in. So what are you doing, kind of like we think about this as GEs, kind of like we ought to be bringing startups in IoT, in hardware, along on that journey with us. So that's a big one. And I think the last one I'll say on collaborative and extended working environment. So we've launched Predix, which is basically it's an operating system, the world's only in kind of first industrial operating system with its own cloud. But what's interesting is on this kind of working together and collaboration, we've opened it up because we're of the notion the more people work on it, the more people can solve on this operating system, the more powerful it can become. So it's not like we created for GE, but we created for GE and for our customers and for the market. And so hopefully, you know, with that, can it be the world's largest marketplace for apps, for industrial apps, right? So that's kind of like some of the things that we're thinking about.
Okay, so clearly the traditional barriers are all falling down and we're looking at working in a very, very different way with a different mindset. So, Denis, we spoke a little bit about co-creation, crowdsourcing. How is Airbus handling that?
So one trend we see, I mean, we don't know to which extent it will impact, you know, very traditional industries like aerospace, or but we see it already in automobile, is the fact that creation is not now limited, you know, to the engineers which are inside the company, and the traditional way of having, you know, careers for engineers, you know, in big industrial company is changing. The top talent today, the top engineers, you know, will work as independent. I mean, a lot of them, and sell their talent to the most, I mean, interesting projects around the world. So we see, for example, in the Netherlands, I've seen that there are so many self-employed people now which are going from one company to the other. But what is also interesting, and it is enabled with the information technology, are you know, the sort of challenges, hackathon, prizes, you know, which you know, attract key talents, you know, to work on a given challenge topics. And there is a very interesting company in the US called Local Motors. You know, they have started, you know, since 2008 to design cars using a community of 50,000 people, and then they 3D print the part, and they can do it at a competitive price. So it's a very challenging model. So as a big group like Airbus, we're looking at this, how is it going to impact us? Which engineers will come to work for us, in the future? For how long will they work? So all this is going to move. We don't know to which extent. It's soon, and especially, for Airbus in Europe, a lot of young people want to work for us, and we have not such a problem. But overall, for the industry, it's something to be watched at. How the individual contributions, will bring their piece to a big industrial project. What will be the model?
Okay, thank you. So it was funny because at lunchtime we were having a discussion around, was this augmented reality, the 3D printing, was it making the supply chain simpler or more complex? We actually said it was simpler because if you suddenly were on a manufacturing line and you were missing a part, you could literally print it, and within 3 or 4 hours you would have your part and you could fix the issue. So that made it simple, but then of course we were saying, but who owns the part? Is it the supplier? Is it the person who designed it? How does that work? So we had discussions around it being more complex. So maybe either Keith or Ghislaine, maybe you can answer this question related to the analytics again.
I think it should be simpler for the user. That is the objective. But behind the scene, it will be very complex. And the people who will be in charge of developing algorithm or developing all these systems will have to be really talented people. So the objective of all this digital world is to make things really simple for the users.
And the way also is really make simple, but customize. Really, that is it's a trend that we see, that more and more, and even for the basic things, not only the car, very sophisticated car, which are customized, but we see that even in the commoditized markets, the consumer want to have, customized product. And that's the reason that really I like what you say regarding, the collaborative and the crowdsourcing. Us, we really now invest a lot in crowdsourcing, internally and externally, And it's not only the test of the product. I think it changed a little bit the culture also of a company, because even, when we launch our new branding, we made crowdsourcing on the new theme, and the new theme of the branding. So I think it's now, we know the company are completely open, can't be completely isolated in the lab or, and is a different BU, business unit. And it changed a little bit, the overall culture of the company, which is, I think, good, because it's what the new generation wants.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, and I don't think we know yet in terms of what this new type of company is going to look like, because we draw a lot of analogies with the telco world or with the tech companies, but they're different. Their product life cycle in terms of how long it's on the market is a year, 2 years, 3 years. The industrials are not in that place. Regulation, security, safety, long-term maintenance. Yes, it's great having an algorithm that's being crowdsourced from somewhere, but who's responsible for it if there's a problem with it? Who maintains it in 15, 20 years' time? So there's all these other issues around supply chain that make Industry 4.0 actually, I think, a tough one. I think it's a complex question. Although at a surface level, yeah, great, we don't need all these different manufacturers because we've reduced our parts count by 90%, so we just need one 3D printer to do it. I'm not sure I buy that. I think it's more complex.
Okay, so maybe let's sort of move on a little bit and go, go back to the notion of the factory. So we started with the factory, so it would be good to probably end with the factory. We've spoken about brilliant factories. We've talking about smart manufacturing, factory of the future. So I know clearly we've said with all this technology, we're moving towards a paperless factory. I remember 20 years ago on a production line, everything was on paper. Today it's on tablets. So tell us about how that's happening, Ghislaine, please.
Yes. You have less and less paper in the factories, and if you go to our assembly line for aircraft engines, you'll see no paper. And even what surprised me is that even the operators themselves, the employees assembling the engines, they were demanding really these tablets, because in their personal life they were using tablets.
Bring your own device.
Yes, and they did not understand why, for their daily job, they were not able to use the same technology. So they were coming to us and saying, I could use a tablet. I know my my child is using things they can move with. I will not say it. Your competitors.
Thank you.
So things are possible. So innovation even comes from them. They want to use new devices, new technologies to do their job. Some of them are also afraid, because we have to say this. Some of them are afraid by technology because they see technology everywhere in the plant now. They're afraid of what would be their job in the future. They don't know, they are afraid of all this. So we have to insist on training, and the level of education of the people we will hire in the future will be different for sure. But the factory is changing, and really what the technology you were talking about are, for some of them, already present, are already implementing in plant.
Okay, so thank you, Ghislaine. Clearly, I think we can say that people are moving towards maybe more value-added activities, maybe less stress, where we have robots. And I also know that in the MENA region, we discussed how technology is really helping access to a much younger population. What did you say about average age 35 in your region?
Yeah, absolutely. So more than 50% of the region is under the age of 30. So that's just incredible potential that's just waiting to be unleashed. And, you know, there are always kind of like two sides to this argument, but we choose to be on the side that this is going to create, you know, a lot more equitable opportunity, a lot more distributed entrepreneurship. Creativity is going to be the name of the game, you know, and it's so we've got to focus a lot on STEM. We've got to work as the private sector a lot more collaboratively with academic institutions and other organizations to how we're going to really, you know, I mean, this is a big issue. You've got a huge talent pool coming into the market. How are you going to get them to believe that technology is on their side? Organizations are going to become a lot more efficient, and it's time to learn and speak the new language of industry. So it's makers and coders together.
Thank you. So it's very interesting how hardware and software is coming more and more together nowadays. So maybe, Keith, do you want a few words before we move on to Catherine to explain how the technology is changing and how she's already looking with Lenovo to change the technology of tomorrow? Do you have a few words, maybe, Keith? Otherwise, you first and then Catherine.
My only comment I was going to make was I don't think there is one Industry 4.0, I think is really important. I think Industry 4.0 for the different industries is actually quite different and looks quite different. If you go to an automotive manufacturer, their issues around Industry 4.0 are very different to an aerospace company and would be very different to you. And I think Ghislaine's point about the technology is out there, and it is out there in individual plants, in individual sectors. You see this technology being deployed actively, but it's very, very variable depending on the sector.
Sure. Well, I think, you know, the trend, I think we can just see what is the trend of the technology, what you want, you know, when you have a smartphone, you want to have, of course, a battery, which is a long battery. You have a tablet, you know, and we just, you know, design a new tablet with a screen, you know, inside the tablet. Why? Because we have seen that also the use, you know, of the tablet sometimes is well, of course, make a presentation, also checking a movie and so on. So I think, you know, more and more, what we see is easy to use, because to your point, quite complex, of course, behind the scene, but easy to use, and also multiple, I will say, Internet of Things, you know, multiple devices, all connected, you know, and that also is a big challenge, of course, because we don't want to, you know, we want to have all our data in all, you know, the different devices that we are using. So I think the challenge for the company, as my company is in Lenovo, is again to anticipate, you know, the consumer needs. When I'm speaking about consumer, but also the corporate part is very important, you know, and of course it's a large part of our business is in enterprise, to take in account this bring on device, and making sure that, for example, the employee of a company are looking for the product, you know, that they want. And that is something that is really an area where we work a lot with our reseller, our distributor, to ensure that we help them, a CIO, for example, we help them to select, the right product and making sure that the employees, the team will be really pleased to get this product, because that is part also of sometimes when you hire some, a younger person, is part of the, I would say, the value when he will select a company. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Denis, do you perhaps have anything to add to this?
There is a new trend we see, and it's just at the beginning, is the introduction of social network within the company, and we introduced them at Airbus, and it's very amazing what you see is our people, because we are a large company of more than 100,000 people. I mean, people are sharing their ideas, and you can see the convergence, between the ideas, coming. So I think it will potentially, if we manage them well, it will help engage the people more, because they will not only go to work to do their job, they will be able to contribute to a larger extent to the company. But we are still at the beginning. It creates a lot of questions about the governance of the company, the roles and responsibilities. But I mean, this is something which is happening and changing the workplace for the good, normally, of the employees.
So I think what we've seen from talking to you guys is that regardless of your industry, whether you're hardware, whether you're software, whether you're in avionics or in computing, whether you're in Europe or the Middle East, whatever is happening, the role of the workplace is clearly changing. Industry 4.0 is here. It's moving. It's probably going to move fast. It's probably going to be the shortest technology revolution that we've ever known. It's going to be really interesting watching this space. I think it would be time now to take any questions from the floor. If people have questions, we can probably, I think there are some micros. We can hand out some micros and ask questions. Any questions from the audience? Yes, okay, so we have a question. Is there a micro? No? Apparently there is no micro, so there is, it's on its way down.
Well, then I also had a question, since I have the micro, maybe
okay.
I can keep.
Perfect.
I think, thank you very much, all of you, for your testimonies. What I remain extremely intrigued in this unpredictability of the future workplace and manufacturing is you talked about the disruptions in the supply chain. And as a CEO of a company, I have a question on what about the disruption of the profitability of our companies. If everything is shared, to whom does the value go to? How do we keep some profits private? Can we still deliver value to our shareholders? I mean, I see a huge world of complexity in that part, where I'd like to hear some of you.
It's not an easy question. I think we will need to reinvent our business models. We cannot we could try to fight against this evolution, but I think there's no use. We have to adapt to be able to identify where will be the value, where will be the key. I don't know, I have no already made solutions, but I'm sure that we will have to reinvent ourselves, to reinvent the business model, to study where is the value in the chain, and to study where we want to be, what will be free, and where people will agree to pay. And that is a real question.
And it's also totally revolutionary in terms of where we're going, where we're heading, and there's still probably some thought leadership required in terms of how can we best manage this for everybody's good.
Yeah, no, just saying, I think certainly from an Altran viewpoint, I think we've developed a specific process looking at Industry 4.0 where effectively we start the question. It's the business model. What is the there'll be we outline what the technical solution is, but the place to start is definitely with the business model, because that's the really hard bit. And I think it is very disruptive, and you can see that in multiple markets. You can see that in for example, telecommunication market really struggles with this. How can they get value from the new ecosystem that's developing? You see it in media. You see it on the dashboard of your car. Who owns the dashboard of your car? Is it Google? Is it Apple? Or is it BMW or Mercedes? So we see these really big problems around who's going to make money out of this as a big issue for all industries at the moment.
So I think we maybe have time for that last question.
Yeah, thank you everyone. I'm Francesca from WeShare. And I had a question regarding something, Rania, that you had also said regarding that you're focusing more on collaboration, so also with the customer and breaking down silos. And so I was wondering, in terms of, since this really also implies a cultural change and really a new type of behavior, whether you're feeling any resistance or difficulties in getting that to really work within your organization.
Love your question. So I think what's interesting is that there are. Let me answer it through an example. Okay, so basically one of the things I talked about earlier is how we're bringing that ecosystem in. And so getting the IoTs and the hardwares and these tech startups like all engaged. So one of the programs that we did is we did an internal call out inviting GE employees, will you partner kind of on a venture sprint with these guys and mentor and coach them? Right? Will you share your expertise? You're all, you could look across the scale. You've got everything from healthcare to power and the aviation and et cetera, everything in between. When you look at GE, and incredible domain expertise and in finance or in leadership skills or you name it. So we had a fantastic turnout from GE because I think the win is it's a two-way street. They're getting a lot out of it as well. They're getting energized by those entrepreneurs. So the more they share, the more they get back. And I think that's, this new sharing economy. I was nicely surprised to see more people want to opt in than not, and more people are willing to give their time and give their expertise and share than not. So I hope that, we did a pilot in one country only. We did it in the UAE so far, and Turkey. So we did it in 2 countries, but I'm optimistic on that one. I'm optimistic on that one. I think our G employees should be a force of kind of positive impact on the communities that they live in. And that's an important community that we're going to need as we grow and localize more.
Thank you, Rania. Unfortunately, our time is up, so it leaves me to thank our panel. We've had a great panel this afternoon. If you could give, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for the panel, that would, thank you. And if you would like to understand what we're doing within Industry 4.0, we actually have some demos at the Creativity Lab, so you're welcome to drop by and see us at the Creativity Lab. Thank you.